I would go to meetings and I'll be really quiet because I was like, I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to, I don't have anything to say. I shouldn't have shared opinions when it's just like bad thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And then he said something to me. He said like, it's okay to have opinions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Scientist Show. Today we have Sundas Khalid. She is a senior analytics lead at Google. She dropped out from high school and later moved to the US and has a business degree from the University of Washington. I met Sundas when we worked together at Amazon. She helped women of color negotiate 1.4 million in incremental salaries. She has over 80,000 followers on Instagram and 29,000 subscribers on YouTube, talking about careers in data science, personal finance, and salary negotiation. Welcome to the show, Sundas.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. Hi, Daliana.
Hi.
How's your day going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, my day is going well. Today is Friday, so I'm off of work. Everybody at Google got a day off, so I'm excited to be here and spending it with you.
Cool. Let's start with your career. I know you dropped out of high school and then later moved to the US. Can you give us an overview of your career journey and some struggles you overcome?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. So, so before we go into my career journey, just to share a little bit more that I'm actually the first female in my family to graduate from a university program, and actually the first female to work in the corporate world. So the path that I have had was definitely not an easy one. And as you said, that I was a high school dropout. I had to drop out because of family reasons, cultural reasons. Girls in my family didn't get to pursue higher education, so that was my destiny pretty much. I ended up staying. I had a gap between my high school and my college for about 6 years, and then I had a near-death experience, and that's when I decided to like change my life. I went back to school, started at a community college, took online classes, and then I transitioned to University of Washington, finished my business degree. At that point, business was the only thing I knew because I didn't grow up with like tech gadgets. We didn't have a computer at home. I didn't have a phone. There was no internet, no concept of internet back then. So I didn't even know that people can actually work from their computers. They can work from, there's like a field called tech. So when I went back to school, the first thought that came to my mind was like business, because that's what people did in my family, a lot of like business entrepreneurs. So halfway through my business degree, I actually ended up taking a course which introduced me to information systems and databases. And that just opened the whole world to me of like data science. And I just fell in love with the space. I wanted to transition and go into like more computer science and data science heavy degree, but I was too close to the graduation that I decided to stick around. But I took a lot of courses on my own and did a lot of self-teaching to kind of make that transition. So I did an internship at Amazon where my title was financial analyst internship, which was more of like a data analyst internship. Did that for about 8 months. At that point, the internships were super long. I don't think they do that anymore. Like 8 months is like very long for internship period. Now they have changed it to 3 months. So did that internship, realized like I definitely don't enjoy the financial analyst aspect of the work, which is like very repetitive work. So again, like I networked a lot with the people at Amazon, understood what it takes to be a data engineer, and ended up learning, again, like taking courses on my own, learning, getting ready for the interview, and then transitioning, coming back to Amazon full-time, working as a data engineer. And then the rest, that after doing data engineering for about 2 years, I decided to switch teams, and that's where I met you. And we worked together for like 3 years, and then both of us made the transition. You were working as a BI engineer, and then I was working, my title was data engineer. Then both of us transitioned to the data scientist job family. So yeah, that's been my journey. And currently I'm at Google. Things have changed so much for me. Like 10 years back, I would have never imagined like this is the life that I would be living. So
yeah,
come a long way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you started your career in Amazon as a data engineer. Can you share some high impact project you worked on and what make those projects successful?
Yeah, I'm happy to share basically the whole system that I've supported and like what were some of the high impact projects. So the team that I supported was called the traffic team. Basically, there are different channels that you can use to enter Amazon. For example, you can go through Google, you can search Amazon on Google, you can click on Amazon, and then you can land on the website. Or you can type directly on your web browser, amazon.com, and then you can go to Amazon directly. So so there's like different ways a customer can enter the site. So my role was my team supported basically the data pipeline of how a customer interacts, where they come from, what they do after they come to the site, and what are the conversions and the orders and the actions that they take on the site. So basically trying to understand the marketing that we're doing on those channels versus the ROI that we're getting from those. Some of my high impact projects working as a data engineer was talking about the customer journey. There are certain actions that a customer takes on the site that makes them more valuable to the company. So I'm not going to share those actions, but you can think of like any, that does not include order. So let's say if we're talking about Instacart. So on Instacart, there are subscriptions, you can like buy the subscription. So now that you have the subscription, you're more likely to buy more on Instacart.
Yeah.
So those are the type of actions that a customer can take on the site that makes them more highly valuable customers. So my work was specifically to build a data pipeline and a central database that hosts those customer actions that people can look at, like product managers, data scientists can look at that data and try to understand what are the traffic paths that a customer takes to get to those high value actions.
Mm-hmm. And what type of tools did you use when you built that? Were you mainly using SQL?
So primarily the system that we were using was Oracle database back then. AWS was still taking off. So I used primarily like Redshift, Oracle, as well as working with S3. So most of it was like done in SQL, but then there are like parts which require you to have like understanding of object-oriented programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Sounds like when you build this type of data pipeline, you don't just write SQL, write code, you also need to think about the business impact. So what are some area in data engineering that you think is very important for people to be successful?
In data engineering, I think one thing is that you need to, I think one of the coolest thing about data engineering that I miss is that when you build something, it's like a physical thing, like, right, that you have built. Like it lives in the cloud, we all know that. Like it's it's not like something that you can hold in your hand, but it's like something that you have built that is going to be used by other people. So let's say if you build a central database, now a lot of people are going to access it. So it's when it comes to like reviews and like kind of like showcasing your work, it's very easy to say like, I built this. So that was like one of the things that I kind of like struggled with after moving out of the data engineering family, was like, I was building like data science models and like doing a lot of statistics work, and sometimes they would get implemented, sometimes they would not.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, I have to like quantify my work, like how did it help the business? Whereas like in data engineer, I could have just said like, look, I built this, and then 10 people are using it, or like 20 people are using it.
Right.
So I know this is not your question, but this was like one of the, I think the coolest part about being a data engineer, like building something, working with like a large chunk of data set that is going to be used by a lot of people. I think it's just like pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And you later transitioned into data science. So you're a self-taught data scientist. Can you share this journey with us?
Yeah, actually, you were part of it. So what I ended up doing is like, I was working as a data engineer for about 2 years. And after doing that for 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm really bored. All projects are like pretty similar. Like all I do is like build data pipeline. And then I move to the next project, and then I'm building another data pipeline. And I think for me, like I was in an entry-level role as a data engineer. So like my work did not involve a lot of thinking. And another thing that I was struggling with was that I was building the data pipelines, and then people will take the data and then present it to leadership. And then by the time that it gets presented to leadership, my name was kind of gotten removed. And I realized, like, at some point I realized, like, I want to be in the front end and not in the back end. And that was the same time I did a project that I was like more data science focused. And that was the time I decided that I'm going to make the switch. So I found Sergey, who was our previous manager, basically decided to have a informational call with him, and told him, like, this is my career aspirations. Like, I want to transition out of data engineering job family to data science job family. But there is a lot that I don't know. So I'm going to need a lot of guidance from you to kind of like teach me. And he said, yes, we're willing to take you. So basically I joined Weblab, and in Weblab, I pretty much how I learned is, like, I was given projects, and then I would basically do research on my own, try to learn, and then come back to work and implement it. And obviously, like, having teammates like you and then other senior members, there was a lot of work that was already done. So it was easy to kind of like read through those papers and those coding repository to go through it. Like, I remember, like, I would go through like each line of R we used R back then. So like I would go through like each line through R and like run it one by one. Like, what does this do? What does this do? So yeah, it was a lot of like struggle, a lot of kind of like failing and then succeeding, failing and then succeeding, and then coming to a point where I was confident enough to execute on my projects on my own. So that was kind of like my journey from data engineering to data science.
Yeah, that's actually brilliant. So a lot of people ask me, how do I transition into data science? I think it's very important to leverage your strengths. You are a data engineer, so you look for a team that have data scientists you can learn from, and also need a data engineer so you can provide a value while you're learning, and once you're ready, you can do the transition. I think that's a very inspiring story. Now, with the background in data engineering, how does this data engineering skills give you an edge as a data scientist?
It definitely helps than hurting. As you know, that depending on which company you are in, which team you are in, you might or might not have access to a data engineer. And a lot of the data science work involved, like the initial step is like getting that data. So if you have the data engineering skills, if you are self-sufficient in understanding where the data lives, how to access it, and how to pull it on your own, it's definitely going to increase your, streamline your project lifecycle. So for me, like I like, compared to my other peers who don't have the data engineering background, I find myself to be more self-sufficient and more independent when it comes to like finding the data and figuring it out from the get-go, instead of waiting for the data engineers to pull the data for me and then I start working on the project.
Yeah, that's awesome. So after you transitioned into data science, is the data science day-to-day life the same as what you imagined?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I did not see that. I actually recently saw, I did not see the Harvard, the sexiest job of 21st century article back then. It is actually recently that I actually came across. So that was like not my inspiration to move to the data science job family. But in terms of, so my expectations were low. Like, I was not expecting a lot from it other than like me enjoying the work that I do. So there were obviously like some good sides to it and then some not so good sides to it. The good side was obviously like I was enjoying the work that I was doing. I was learning a lot while working on each project that I was getting assigned to. Downside, I would say, is that like not all of my projects would get implemented. Like I remember like when we were working in the team, like a lot of our work would be like research focused.
Yeah.
And then when our work is research focused, then you're like, okay, we're gonna work on this, then we're going to pitch it to business, or we're going to pitch it to product, and then let's see if they take it. So the possibility is that they might not take it. So not all of my projects made it, but even the projects that didn't make it, made it, like they taught me something. So I don't think it was a waste of time, but there was something I learned along the process. So now, like, coming down to the data scientist is the sexiest job. I think that's just like a over romanticization of the data science job family. I don't fully agree with that statement. First of all, like how can a job be sexy? That part I don't understand. A lot of the data science work is depending on, again, like how much the type of people that you have access to. For example, if you don't have data engineer, then you're gonna have to figure that out on your own. And possibility is that you're gonna be like working with dirty data and then you have to clean it. So a lot of the data science work is primarily like prepping the data and making sure like your data is clean to go into the model. So that part is definitely not sexy at all. There are some sexy parts to it, which is like the final part, which is like where you actually apply the model and then it works wonderfully. And then there are like amazing like visualizations that you can go and present to teams. So yeah, there are some sexy aspects to it, but I don't fully agree with how romanticized the data science job family is in general.
Yeah. So how do you compare a career in data engineering versus a career in data science?
In terms of what kind of, could you elaborate more?
Yeah. So for example, what are the pros and cons? What type of people you think should pursue a career in data engineering? What type of people would enjoy data science work?
Yeah, I think people who would enjoy data engineering work is people who like working in building pipelines, working with big data, and people who like to build basically, and people who like to work with data. So like those are the two things that would, and obviously like having a good understanding of like cloud technologies, like if you enjoy working with cloud technologies, because all the data engineering is done over cloud. So having those three combinations, I think like makes you kind of like gives you like strengths to work as a data engineer. Again, like you have to be enjoying that work, because as I said, like a lot of the data engineering work is like in the back end. So if you enjoy being in the back end, then like that's the perfect role for you. Data science, on the other hand, is much more ambiguous, I would say. Not all projects are the same. And every problem that you're given is somewhat different. So if you like that ambiguity, if you like being technical, if you like statistics, if you like diving deep into the data, if you like identifying problems that are currently existing, I think that like investigatory hat kind of like makes you a good data science personnel.
Yeah. So what is your day-to-day as a data scientist?
So a typical day-to-day, like depending on like where you are in your project, or your typical day could look very differently. For example, if you are like in the initial stages of the project, a lot of your work is trying to understand what the problem is that business is trying to solve. So that could look like you meeting with stakeholders, trying to understand what the problem that they're solving. And a lot of those conversations would involve you giving your basically input, because sometimes the business teams and the product teams come to you and they don't know what they're looking for. They have an idea what the problem is, but they actually don't know what they need. So asking those questions and trying to like figure out what exactly they need, you might be able to propose something better. So that's why like that initial stage is super important, to kind of like narrow down the focus and figure out the problem before you actually jump into the project. So depending on the project cycle, again, going back to that, like it could look very different. So let's say if you are in your initial project cycle, it will be like a lot of meeting with stakeholders, like documenting and everything. If you're in your second phase of the project, which will be like doing the head down work, and that would mean like you're primarily like sitting on your computer, like working with data, preparing the data, and then pushing it through whatever model you need to push it through. And then the third phase would be like, now you have something that you want to present to the team. So a lot of the times I would write a paper, and then I will schedule a meeting with them, and then I'll present the insights that I got out of that. And then there might or might not be a revision. So I might have to go back and do more heads down work and then share the updated version. So depending on where you are in the project lifecycle, your day-to-day would look very different. And that makes it, for me, like that personally makes it a very interesting field, interesting job, because not all of my days every day of mine, it looks different.
Yeah. And what are some struggles in your day-to-day work? What part do you enjoy the least?
Let's see. Let's see how I want to answer it. I would say in terms of like the parts that I don't enjoy the most, obviously, I think like the data cleaning aspect, it's not that enjoyable. And as I said previously, like a lot of the work is kind of like preparing the data. So what I'm excited about is the automation, which everybody keeps talking about, like the data science automation. But what that automation is primarily going to focus on is like these identifying these like data anomalies, and primarily like building ML tools that can be applicable to like common problem set. So I'm excited for that because like that will remove a lot of the repetitive work that I have to do. And then obviously like sometimes when you're working with clients and your product, them not having a good understanding of the data and the data science field, it's somewhat frustrating because then you have to like really mellow it down. So then all your non-tech audience can get onboarded. And I think that's where the good communication comes in. Like you have to be really good at communicating, and you should be able to flip the switch depending on like who you were talking to, and be able to like communicate all your technical aspects into like simple problems that other people can understand.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned the data science automation. Can you tell us more about what is data science automation and how do you build a good automation?
That's a great question. So before we talk about that, I think one of the things that it's a rumor that is going around in the industry is that data science field is going to go away. And let me ask you, like, do you think it's going to go away? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it will go away. There are definitely going to be a lot of tools that help us automate a lot of things, but I think there needs to be someone who understands statistics, understand a business problem to decide how do I use the tools, how do I interpret the results. So I don't think it's going away.
Yeah, I am with you 100%. I think we have talked about this before as well. The repetitive work, as I said, will be automated. And then the common problems that doesn't involve a lot of thinking would be automated. But at the end of the day, you still need to figure out, you still need to have a very good understanding like how statistics work, how ML work. And you need to be able to have that context that a system will never have, to be able to figure out like what exactly to apply to a problem set. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to evolve. And that means that you have to keep evolving with the industry. So that whether that means like you learning how to use those automation tools, or whether that means like you defining like how things should be automated.
Yeah. Do you build a lot of automation tools and reports?
No, in my role, I don't build reports. I actually don't enjoy reporting work at all. So I don't do any reporting. I recently built a tool that was actually was very well received by my org, as well as like a lot of my sister orgs. A tool that I built was basically nothing complicated. Was basically doing when you're running your test, you have to like randomize your sample data. So I basically built a tool that allows teams to, in a flexible way and a customized way, lets you randomize your data set based on like your defined criteria.
Yeah.
So those are the type of tools I would say like I build, but reporting work, I hate reporting. I do not enjoy reporting work at all. And I don't do that. No.
Yeah, no, I love that you shared the tool. So I think that's the area of data science we don't talk about. When we talk about data science, we think about machine learning, analysis, but a lot of times building those type of tools can empower your team, empower the business to run experiments faster, or accelerate the development of data science project. So I always encourage data science, when you finish a project, you go back to think about what are some assets you can reuse, and you can either write a paper or create a tool that can add a lot of value both to the business and also to your personal data science portfolio.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you're definitely gonna you're definitely going to be doing like your day-to-day data science work, but if you really want to grow as a leader and you want to be considered the thought leader in your space at work, you need to identify those gap areas and you need to provide solutions for them or share your thoughts on them to how to solve those big gap areas that are beyond your team, that are possibly beyond your org as well. Because I think that's how you grow in your career, that like from like entry level to like a senior to a principal. I think that's what like makes things, that's what like how different level of people perform differently, right? Like initially you're just thinking about your focus area, your problem, but then you eventually start thinking broader, like how can I solve org-wide challenges? How can I solve bigger challenges that are bigger gap that are currently exist in my team or in my org?
Right. Because when you try to think about that, you're not just thinking about your own analysis. You're thinking about what are some area I can make it better in the entire process. You're trying to improve the system. So as a data scientist, I think that's another very important mindset when you're thinking about growing your career, providing value to the business. So can you share more about how do you grow your career as a data scientist from junior to senior?
So I would say like when you're a junior, what you should focus on is learning. Learn as much as you can. If you're given a project, if you're given some problem to solve, it will probably come with the requirement, like this is what you need to do. So possibly you might not need to do a lot of thinking initially when you are like just starting out. So the requirements that are given to you, make sure you excel in them and you deliver on that project and you show the ownership and you like deliver results. So like I like going back to Amazon terms, like two big things that are highly valued in entry level hires is like ownership and results. Like if you have those two things, that means you are like doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you start growing in your level, you're becoming a senior, then you start looking beyond your work. As you said, like see how you can help your team. If there is like a gap area that you can fill, you will be mentoring a lot of juniors. How can you help other grow? And you will be doing like a lot of kind of like a consultant kind of role where juniors will come to you and ask you like how do I solve this problem, and then you'll provide guidance and say like, okay, this is an approach that you can try. So then again, like as you go more higher and higher, your scope of work, your scope of thinking, and the problem solving becomes bigger and bigger. So again, like everybody starts at the entry level. You learn what you do, and then eventually with the experience, with time, you will get to the point where you are solving bigger challenges and solving bigger problems that are helping not just one business lead, but multiples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you also mentioned it's important to have good communication skills, especially when you talk to non-tech business leaders. Can you share how can you communicate better with people coming from non-technical background?
I would say I don't have a secret other than like just simplify the problem. Mm-hmm. Let's say if we're taking like a simple regression problem, right? You did a regression analysis and you now have to pitch that regression analysis shows something, and now you have to pitch that to the business team, to the product team to get a buy-in. Try to see how you can simplify that regression analysis that you did into normal English terms. Mm-hmm. And share it from their perspective, like how, let's say if we're doing a regression analysis on like somebody buying more on the site because of X, try to like explain it in a maybe with a PM hat and say like, this is what happens when we do this. So that way you still have like the backend model that you built, but you are presenting it in a simple English form where it's easy to understand for those people. And if they have to take that and sell it to somebody else to get a buy-in, they're able to do that as well. So think of it more like an education kind of thing. And I also feel like as a data scientist, you're also a teacher, because you're always teaching other people like how to do, what does a certain thing means, and like how does this work in like non-tech terms.
Yeah, I love how you put it. So basically, instead of interpreting, hey, this is p-value, this is a coefficient, you tell them, you put it in a scenario. Hey, this is what happens, how it impacts the business when this value change. What does it mean for the business? So instead of just talking statistic, presenting tables, you put them in the use case. And that's how you communicate with business leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I know you had a very awesome career, worked at 2 large tech companies. So what are some mistakes you made in your career?
I made a lot of mistakes. Let me see which one I want to. So I would say slightly controversial. I would say that staying at a company and a team for too long. I think as soon as like you think of learning as like a curve, right?
Yeah.
As soon as your curve starts flattening, I think you should like start looking for other opportunities, especially if you're new in your career. And like that's the time where you get to learn. So I think I have stayed in certain teams and certain company. We all know what that is. Yeah, I was at Amazon for 7 years, and I think that was a little too long.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you can say it. Yeah.
And also, like you probably know that, like in big tech, there is a RSU component where your salary takes a hit after 4 years, which means that it's not you're making less money than possibly your peers. So, like financially, it's also not a good idea to stick around for so long. So I would obviously like do that differently. The second is managing up. I think like that also I learned the hard way. Like it's very important to, and the big part of managing up is like showcasing your work and talking about it. A lot of the times when we're doing our work, we think that people will notice and they will see like what we did, but it's actually not the case. You have to like advocate for yourself and you have to speak about your work. And show them that this is something that you did really cool, and they should also care about it. So understanding like how to managing up has also been like one of the learnings that has been helpful specifically for me in terms of kind of like building my career and like going further in my career. And the third, like super small one, like I can go on and on, not speaking up in meetings. So I come from a culture where I was taught that like if I don't have anything, I shouldn't have like opinions, right? Like, and it was actually in Weblab, Dan, what was his name? Daniel Partial. Yeah, Daniel Partial. Actually, he said something to me that was stuck in my head. And after that, like so I would go to meetings and I'll be really quiet because I was like, I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to, I don't have anything to say. I shouldn't have shared opinions when it's just like bad thing to do, right? Yeah. And then he said something to me. He said like, it's okay to have opinions. And I kind of like watched him a lot of the times and a lot of the leaders too, a lot of leaders have opinions. And you go into meetings, you have to speak up where all those leaders are present, because that's the way you get visibility. And that's the way you kind of like show that you, even though you probably don't fully understand what it is, you're trying to understand and you're trying to ask questions. So speaking up in meetings early on has definitely been a hard thing for me, but I think over time I've gotten better where I do a lot of like pre-work before any meeting. So that way I'm like prepared in the meeting and I'm ready to speak whenever there's a room for somebody to share something.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I also had the same fear. I feel that I don't know a lot of things. I'm just a junior data scientist. What if I say something wrong? Nothing bad will happen when people say something wrong. A lot of times you see other people ask questions. That's exactly the same question you want to ask. So you're helping people.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and also speaking of Daniel Partial, so he used to be the senior manager of the team me and Sundas used to work at. I want to share a personal story. I think he also encouraged me when I just joined our team called Weblab. He asked me to lead the data science training for the entire Amazon to teach people how to do A/B testing, how to make data-driven decisions. And at that time, I had a lot of fear. I feel, oh, English is not even my first language. I still struggle with grammar. I have an accent. How can I be able to give presentation in front of the entire Amazon? But once you have this project, then I have to do that. And the first time I remember I was really nervous and I don't know how to answer questions. And then after the training, some colleagues on the team told me, oh, you did great. You should just, the only feedback, you need to relax a little bit. Maybe you can tell a few jokes. So I think a lot of times we feel we're not enough, we're not good enough to give trainings, but we actually know a lot of things. And I think I got lucky. Someone pushed me into this role that helped me build confidence in my communication skills at work. And if you don't have this opportunity, I encourage you to push yourself. Like Sundas, you have valuable opinions. Like the leaders know the business, but they don't know the data as much as you do. So you should always speak up. And it's okay if you're wrong, because if you are someone who have opinion, then people will also respect your opinion. They might ask your feedback in their project, and then you can gradually build your influence. But of course, when you say something, you need to make sure the things you say is has value. It's not, you're asking a question, not just a question you can find on Google. It's thoughtful, but don't be afraid to ask stupid opinions, and don't be afraid to disagree with even your manager or your senior manager, as long as the way you communicate is respectful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I do want to appreciate that that you shared your experience, because when I worked with you, honestly, like you never came off as like you're nervous. Every time you spoke up in meetings, maybe like you were nervous inside, but like it never came across me. Like you always seemed so confident to me. And you always like, I feel like you have this speaking pattern where you like you talk slow and then you take pauses. And I can never tell that you're nervous. Like, so just wanted to tell you that keep doing whatever you're doing, like it's working for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sundas. So you help women of color negotiate 1.4 million in incremental salaries. That's amazing. Can you tell us some tips to negotiate salary?
Yeah, definitely. So earlier this year, which was still in 2021, I don't know when this will be published, I started doing something where I was meeting with people. I started meeting with people, specifically women of color who have a job offer. And I basically gave them kind of like strategies. I would look at their offer and then I'll tell them like, okay, there is a room here, there's a room here. This is how you can like prepare your pitch to the recruiter on how to ask for this number. So the reason I started doing that was because when I was negotiating my job offer, I had a mentor who was there for me and who guided me. And I realized how big of a difference it made, because like when you're preparing for job interviews, you work so hard, and then the final stage is getting that job offer. You're so tired by that time. You're like, I'm just gonna accept the job offer, and I'm gonna go for it. And you also like start wondering like, are they gonna take the offer back if I ask for the money? But the reality is they're not gonna take the offer back. And if you don't negotiate, the chances are that you're not gonna make the same as their peers who have negotiated. And those like obviously like those peer review, those performance reviews and those yearly bonuses do happen for everybody, but you are never going to get the chance at that company to get that such a big bump that you can initially at the negotiation stage. So for me, like that person was, and that was again like one of my ex teammates from Amazon. So he basically guided me a lot through the process of like, okay, this is how you should tell the recruiter, this is how you should communicate, this is where you should look for the number. And whenever I needed to get on a call with him and I'm getting nervous and I'm like getting sweaty palms, and then he'd be like, it's gonna be fine. Just having that person in my ear telling me like, it's gonna be okay, ask for this number. I think that was super, super helpful. So I wanted to do that for other people where I started volunteering. Basically, every week I'll meet a couple of people where I would help them negotiate. They have an offer and I'll help them figure out like, this is where you should do the market research. And then this is where you should, where there is room for negotiation. So, and this is how you should ask your recruiter. So that's how we came up with this is currently November. So over the last 11 months, I've been doing that every week. I dedicate a few hours, and a total of 1.4 million incremental I have helped negotiate, which is, I think is amazing, because I did not anticipate that number to be this huge. I had a goal for 1 million, but I didn't expect that it will be 1.4 in just like first 10 months. And that also reminds me, like, that just means like, if there was this much room, that means like people are not asking, the first job offer is not the final job offer. That means there's always room. When you're not, so coming to the tips, like when you are not negotiating, you're basically leaving money on the table, because what's happening in the industry, a lot of people, when they get their job offer, they are negotiating their job offer. So when you are taking that first offer and accepting it, the company is actually giving you the offer thinking that you will negotiate. But when you don't negotiate, you accept it, that means you just left money on the table. And why would you not ask for an additional number that you know that you can get? And I really hope that in the industry, we become more open about like discussing salaries. I think the tools such as like levels.fyi is much needed, where salary information is available and you can go and look like, what is the market value, and then compare yourself against it, especially when you get an offer. So number 2 is obviously like, do the market research. Levels.fyi is a great place for salaries in tech. It covers pretty much like all tech companies in USA. And I think eventually it's getting a lot of popularity. So I think like their database is only going to get bigger from here. So like, do the market research and understand, like, everybody gets nervous, like negotiating, but you are doing the right thing. You're not asking for something that you don't deserve. You're only asking for market value. And that's fair to ask for your market value, because everybody else is getting paid that number. So why shouldn't you?
Yeah. And you mentioned doing research. What are some website or tools or method people can do better research at their salary?
Yeah, so there are, one of my favorite ones is levels.fyi. And you can link it in the description if you want to. So levels.fyi has a lot of tech salaries. Then there's an app called Blind, which they have started recently. So it's an anonymous app for like tech employees.
Teamblind.com, right?
Is it Teamblind? Okay.
Yeah.
I think they may have added the Teamblind. Yeah, feel free to add it to the description. So they have recently started the salary depository, like the database. But even if you don't find your job and role there, you can always ask people in the community anonymously if you have a job offer. So that's a great place. And third is like, obviously talk to your friends, talk to your peers. Not sharing salaries, not talking about salaries only hurts us. It actually benefits the companies. So it's only going to help you if you have that open discussion, like share with your friend, like if they are in the same role, like, hey, I got this offer. What do you think? Like, should I negotiate more? Should I negotiate less? So those are the 3 of my favorite ways to kind of like do the market research and kind of like figure out what I should be getting paid.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And what are some mistakes you see people make when they negotiate salary?
Number 1 is obviously they don't negotiate at all. They accept the first offer. Number 2, they think that you can only have 1 round of negotiation. You can actually have multiple rounds of negotiation. The third is like somewhat harder to do, is like, if you are in the job market, make sure like you're lining up your interviews so you have those multiple offers that you can like use for like leveraging against each other. So those are like my top 3 tips, I would say. And I know like the third one is the hardest, but it's the most successful one out of all 3.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And so now when you join the company after you negotiate salary, a lot of people feel they don't have a lot of savings, so they don't think about personal finance. I know that's the area you talk a lot about. So why do you think starting investing early in people's career is important?
That's a great question, Daliana. Let me ask you, do you invest?
I do. I
good.
put in my 401k. I'm not like an active trader, but I try to diversify my asset.
Okay, that's good. Because when I started working, I had so I didn't come from any education of like financial literacy. There was like never in the household, there was like never discussion about like investing in stocks. And even when there was like a discussion of money, it was like limited to men, because like women are primarily focused on like budgeting and saving. So like investing was never really discussed when I was growing up. So when I started making money, I basically focused on that, where I was saving. So I like data science has a lot of money, and I was making a lot of money, and all I was doing is I was like putting it in my bank account, in my savings account. And I thought that was like, I was doing a great job. Like I didn't even invest in a 401k, set up 401k. And I remember every time I would go to the bank, and then the bank people will like treat me so nice. They'd be like, "Oh, ma'am, come here, like sit here." I was like, why are they being so nice to me? They're like, "You are our premium client." I'm like, okay. I don't know what is happening. Basically, I had a lot of money in my bank account, and I didn't know, like, people don't keep a lot of money in their bank account. They actually invest. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, that's when I like started thinking long term, like started thinking about retirement. And I came across a talk which happened at Google by this guy named J.L. Collins. Yeah, so he's an author. He basically came at Google to give a talk. So I ended up listening to his talk, and it's actually available on YouTube as well. So if anybody else wants to watch it, they can watch it on YouTube. So basically, he talks about like investing, and he talks about the compound interest and all of that, like how time is a very, very important factor, and how it's actually safe to invest. Because the stock market, I think like a lot of us like think like it's just you put in money there and it's never going to come back. It's like a black box, but it's actually not true. So the way he communicated, he basically made me feel comfortable about investing, about the stock market. So I ended up reading one more book, which is I'll Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. So that was also like super influential. He basically talks about the whole finance system in USA. And I wish I'd read that book when I moved to USA, because it talks about credit score, mortgage, and everything else that you need to know. Eventually, I started basically signed up for my 401k, talked to a lot of advisors, which are, again, like this is one of the Google perks where they have a lot of financial advisors that you have access to for free. So I talked to set up a lot of calls, talked to a lot of them, and educated myself as much as possible. And finally came to a point where I only emergency fund in my bank, and the rest was invested and diversified in the right places. So I specifically talk about a lot on my social media, because a lot of women specifically, especially women who come from the same background that I come from, are not into investing, because that's not what they are taught. That's not something that is discussed often in the house. So I talk about it on my social media, because when they see me, another women of color coming from their similar background, they see me investing, they see me talking about money, they also want to do it. So I know a lot of women who also got into investing after I started talking about it. So that's like my primary reason to keep sharing on this topic, because I think it's very, very important to actually make your money work for you instead of you working for the money, which we are all doing. But let's put it to good use, and let's make sure like we're thinking long term and taking advantage of all the investment options that are out there for us.
Yeah. I really appreciate you talking about this topic in the community, because I think a lot of people also have the mindset that money is bad, but money is actually provides safety, security for a family, right? How you going to take care of your children, your parents when they're sick or when they want to go on vacation. So I think it's very important, and people shouldn't feel ashamed to want to build wealth. And
no, not at all.
What are some of your best tips about investing, building wealth?
My best tips is obviously get educated. I know like a lot of people like rely on advisors, and then there's like middle manager as well. They like investment robo advisor. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to use those, But I think if you can invest time educating yourself, you will be way more smart about investing. So getting educated, whether that is like reading the 2 books that I mentioned or reading some other book, get deep into it, because like that's going to give you the basically the fundamentals of what you need to know. And then you can like ask for help, and you can like hire an advisor or whatever you need to do, and take it from there. The second is like find friends and find network that is into investing, that likes talking about money, because the chances are that you will learn something from them and they'll learn something from you. So like use a lot of like these peer mentoring thing. And for somebody like specifically in USA, like take advantage of that 401k. A lot of companies do the 401k match. Take advantage of that. That's just like free money that is sitting there, that if you don't invest in your 401k, and it's at least like up to until the match, the company match, you're basically going to leave money on the table. So for Google, like it's like $10,000 that if I invest in my 401k, they're going to give me $10,000. So if I don't invest in my 401k, they're going to basically not give me that $10,000. So think about that. And also there's a lot of like tax advantage accounts. So get educated on that. So there's like Roth IRA, there's traditional IRA. So like get educated on all of those and see like how you can maximize your portfolio, and also take advantage of like all these tax savings accounts that you're if you're not doing that, you're probably paying a lot in taxes right now.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And you have a large following on Instagram and YouTube talking about data science, career, personal finance. So what are something you're so passionate about that you feel people don't talk a lot enough that you really want everybody to know?
Yeah, so the couple of topics I think we already discussed, like data science. I feel like there's a lot of confusion around that topic. For me, the biggest motivator, specifically starting on YouTube, was that I was seeing a lot of articles being published where like follow top 10 YouTubers that are talking about data science. One of the things that I kept seeing over and over again is like primarily guys. No offense to the guys, but I felt like there was like, there needs to be some women talking about data science.
Yeah.
Because like, as I said earlier, like when you see people who look like you, you're more likely to do something. So for me, like that was like kind of like a inspiration that I took, and I started talking about data science on YouTube. And it's actually been going pretty well. My channel has actually grown to 34,000 subscribers in just the last 4 months. And last 4 months is when I actually doing it more consistently and seriously. So data science is obviously a big, huge topic of my content pillar that I talk about. Salary negotiation is another one. Financial literacy is another one. And then the last one is like career related tips, whether that is like managing up or like managing your productivity and things like that.
Yeah. So what are some of the tips about increasing productivity?
The tips, number one tip is turn off all notification, turn off your phone and put it head down. So for me, I think I struggled with it when the work from home started, where I was spending a lot of my time on the phone, and the notification comes and then I'm like, oh, who just liked my stuff, who just commented on my stuff. Like turn it off altogether. I have all my notifications turned off, Instagram notification turned off, all social media notifications are turned off. And then my phone is always head down. The second tip that I use quite a bit personally is like I schedule everything out on my calendar. So, and I do that like 2-3 weeks in advance. So whether that is like me doing hands-on work or me talking to people or me even working out, like that's also lives on my work calendar, that it says there's a block of workout. So I put everything on my calendar. That way it's like a mental reminder that I need to work on something. So that has been like super, super helpful. And third is the last one is like I say no a lot more than I say yes. And that is like same at work as well as outside of work, like with content creation as well. The chances as when you become successful, when you're good at something, a lot of people are going to ask you to do things for them, with them. So you have to be very smart and strategic to pick the things that are aligned with your brand and with your vision and with your work. So learn to say no and say it more often.
Yeah. Well, you have said a lot of yes to me. I think you must really like me.
I love you. Yeah, I really like you.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really like you too. We had such great time working at Weblab.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So, what do you think about the future of data science and analytics space in general?
I think the future is not going to look the same that it looks today. It's obviously going to, as I said in earlier, that our industry is evolving. There's some aspects of automation are coming. So the industry itself is going to evolve, and it's going to look different 10 years from now than it looks today. So in order to make sure that you're relevant, you have to like keep upskilling and keep making sure that you're moving with the industry. And then from the data science standpoint, I think the 90% of the data that currently is in this world was generated over the last 2-3 years. So the potential is huge. There is like 99% of the data that is still yet to be analyzed. So there's a lot of data in the world that people haven't gotten their hands on. So I see that potential for data job and data job families to be huge. Yeah, it might look different. It might not look the same, but I don't think it's going anywhere. It's here to stay. And AI, we didn't even talk about that. Like that industry is just starting out. And I think the potential is huge with how artificial intelligence is going to evolve, just not just data science domain, but every parts of our lives.
Mm-hmm. So with there like a lot of new tools and different type of machine learning AI models, how do you keep up to date to new information?
That's a great question. I read, so in terms of like keeping up with the news, I read a lot of blogs. Rather that is like written through like tech publications such as like TechCrunch, economics. Like I also try to stay on top of like economics and what's happening. And then the addition is I don't let me see how I want to say this. I don't like go, maybe I'm like just doing it for too long. Like it doesn't feel like I'm going out of my way to learn something, but it's like part of my daily routine where there's a news article. Okay, I'll spend 5 minutes reading through it. There's a lot of like emails that get sent out at work that are like talking about like this is a new innovation and this is a new innovation. I'll just like read through those, spend some time like reading through those. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like, to me, it doesn't feel like I'm like going out of my way trying to learn something, but like just trying to like read what comes in front of my eyes. Like I'm reading through it and I'm trying to understand, okay, this is what's happening in the industry, or this is what's happening in the industry. And obviously like the hands-on learning for me is like the big one, is like doing it. Like I love working on projects where I have to learn and then apply it, because I think that's the best way to learn, and kind of like make sure whatever you're learning, it stays with you for a long time. And getting hands-on work is the best way to kind of like keep it with you for a long time period.
Yeah, I love that. So doing something is the best way to learn it. Yeah. So before we wrap up, what is something in your life or in your career that you're excited about?
Honestly, there's nothing exciting in my life.
I love the honesty.
Nothing exciting in my life. Mm-hmm. Let me see. Maybe I should make up something. I'm really excited about YouTube. I think I'm just getting started, and the amount of growth I have seen over the last few months, I think there's potential is huge. And like, I don't know if you've seen my videos, like they are horrible lighting. So I just fixed the lighting, so I know it's gonna get better. So I'm excited about YouTube. I'm also excited about my time at Google. So I've been here for about 2 years. I want to see what's next for me. Eventually, at some point, I'm going to start looking for a different team and different product area. So I'm excited for that. And hopefully, once this whole pandemic and the lockdown, still haven't traveled. So hopefully, when all of this is much more calm down, like I'm looking forward to traveling. I really want to go to Hawaii because it's been 2 years since I took a trip to Hawaii.
Yeah. I know. I feel you. Yeah. Well, this is a great conversation. Thank you so much, Sundas, for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me. This was fun. I think we had some good laughters, and it was good to like reconnect and discuss, kind of like reflect on our time spent in Weblab and Amazon together. I really miss working with you. So it was good to talk to you again.
Yeah. Hope one day we can hang out in person again.
Yeah, we will. We will hang out in person.
Cool. See you.
Awesome. Have a good one. See you later. Bye.